Today's date is 20 August 2022, and I am in Georgetown, Delaware, at the Delaware Aviation Museum, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Michael Karr. Thank you, Michael, for sitting down and talking to us. We
Not a
just
problem.
spoke to your father,
Yes.
so that you have to follow that up.
Yeah, that's good. Tough act to follow.
Okay. Give us a little bit of background about yourself. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born in Delaware County, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Grew up in Southwest Philadelphia on Millick Street. Um, Grandparents still lived in Yeadon.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I came from. And then when I was 10 years old, moved down here to Delaware with my parents and lived here since.
Gotcha. Okay. You joined the Army, obviously.
Yep.
What made you join the Army?
Well, big part of it was my dad, but the other factor to it was actually 9/11 for me.
Okay.
I saw what happened, and I didn't want that happening here again.
Gotcha. So tell us about that day. First of all, how old were you?
Oh, God, I was, 14, 15 years old, something like that? No, sorry, probably a little bit younger than that. Sitting in math class, and next thing we see is a teacher run up, say, hey, turn the TV on. So we turn the TV on, and we just happened to see the smoke. Not too long after that, we watched the second plane hit the other tower. And we got told, hey, get your stuff together, you guys are going home. Parents were called, mom and dad met me, and by the time we got home, we watched the first tower collapse. So that was pretty rough for all of us.
I can't imagine what that must be like for someone that young.
Back then, I really didn't understand it.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew of it, knew it was tragic. I mean, watching people rather jump out of the building than being burned alive, I definitely understood that part, but I just couldn't, at that point in time, understand why somebody wanted to do that.
Right.
Why would someone take a plane, drive it through a building, kill so many people for some extremist religion?
Right.
I couldn't process it then.
Did you have any sense of what that, as you're watching it, as you're in the moment, any sense of what that would mean for not only your future but the future of the world, the gravity of that? I mean, people consider that our Pearl Harbor.
Yeah,
Did that
quite
sink in for you at the time?
Oh yeah, no, I knew then my life was going to change because something was going to happen, and that's when the war kicked off for us. Years later, decided, you know what, I want to do special forces, and my parents were like, nope, not going to happen. So my dad made the suggestion, hey, why don't you become a tank, be a tanker? Nah, I think that's too dangerous. Dad knew right then I had no idea what I was doing. He says, how about this? Come to the National Guard, work with me, and if you feel like you still want to do Special Forces later on, you can always transfer over. My mom was really on the edge of like, no, I really don't want to do it. My dad flat out told her, he said, we either do it now or he does it when he's 18. So thankfully my mom and dad agreed, let me do it now. So went in, went to basic training in 2005 and went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma there. That was quite a journey for me on that part there. Had some great memories and some scary memories there. And then 2006 I went to AIT at Fort Gordon, Georgia, and my dad was actually gearing up to go overseas at that point in time as the contractor. And so I explained my situation to my drill sergeants at the time. I was like, I really got to get this passed. This is my last time my dad's going to be here for a while. So they're like, okay, well, you're going to take your PT test and we're going to do a room assignment. So they came to my room and I'm tripping over everything. I got my battle buddies off to the side. They're like, hey, just say this. I can hear him. My drill sergeant turns to him and says, shut up. He's got to do this on his own. Finally got through. I was actually able to get my pass to see my dad one last time before we went over.
Let's pause there. Let's go back. Other members of your family that are in the military, because clearly that had an impact on you.
Oh yeah, my grandmother, she was in the military. She was in the Marine Corps. Just recently found out about my great uncle and then my great grandfather as well.
So you have a military heritage in your family.
Oh yeah, very
Is that
strong.
something that you think about? Sense of pride. I'm carrying on the
Most
flame, if you
definitely
will.
gives me a great sense of pride.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see it on my dad's face every time he sees me in my uniform. He sees what I've become, and he smiles every time.
Um, what war did you participate in?
Operation
Obviously, the War on
Enduring.
Terror, but
Yep.
specifically.
Operation Enduring Freedom.
Okay.
I've been to Afghanistan, Kuwait. I've also visited Japan and Korea.
Okay. What did you end up doing? What was your MOS?
Uh, so for when I was in Afghanistan, I'm a 25 Quebec. It's a multi-channel communications operator.
Okay.
Back then, we still had big old line of sights, still a little bit of clunkiness, but we didn't bring those over. We brought the new SATCOM with us at that point, and I got actually pulled from my mission because the 160 Signal Brigade needed someone to assist them, and so I got chosen for that part there. At that point in time, I became their unit movement officer. My job there was to basically get equipment from point A to point B safely, and and I did that as well while I was in Kuwait. Both times, never lost a single piece of equipment or personnel. So we were looking at over a couple $1 million worth of equipment saved,
Right.
and countless in lives. So
Right.
that was pretty good for us.
Right.
While I was over in Afghanistan, I wore probably about 15 different hats. I was a chauffeur for generals, colonels, take your pick. I had to go pick them up off the flight line. I had to take care of class 2 with a buddy of mine. Had to make sure vehicles were maintained. Also make sure anyone who came in, or even my current guys who were there, that we make sure we had room and board. And yeah, I had a lot of hats while I was over there.
Yeah. What year were you in Afghanistan?
2013, 2014.
Okay. So, what is it like? Tell us what it's like when you arrive in Afghanistan, because this is the place where the terrorists were training.
Yeah.
That
It was
participated in 9/11. So, what's it like to finally be there?
it was a high tempo thing for us. When I first arrived, as soon as that door came down, it was middle of the night, and it's like as if you'd turned your oven on and opened up the oven, smack you right in the face with that heat. And this was in the middle of the night, so you'd think it'd be colder. No, it was still pretty hot for us. We were all on edge. I mean, we were greenhorns, so we didn't know anything. About a day or so later, we got mortared, and we didn't think anything. We were like, holy smokes. So we're all rushing out inside. But then we're starting to realize, okay, they're doing this a little too often. Come to find out, what they were doing was they were freezing the mortars and tubes, setting them down, and then walking away. And so by the nighttime, they've already been done melted and launched right over to us. I was first stationed over in Kandahar, and at that point in time, before I got transferred up to my next duty station, we heard the sirens go off, and we all got told, hey, hunker down in place, lock and load. That took us off for a loop because we were like, okay, what's going on? Come to find out, someone had went up into the gun tower and turned the gun on the front gate. And so I don't remember how many lives were lost that day, but I mean, it was pretty tragic for us because none of our guys, but still it's our guys. And then we really got pissed off because about 3 days later we got mortared, and that guy walked out. The one who actually ended up turning the gun. He was released.
Afghani.
Yeah, he was an Afghani. Yep. He was part of the Afghani army, and somehow, some way, during the mortar, he was able to walk out free. So after that, I got transferred up to Bagram Air Force Base, and that's where I'd stayed for the rest of my tour there.
What's it like? You're working with these people, and you don't know, if any of them could turn on you. How's that? How do you deal with that?
It's scary. You're always on edge. I always told myself never put your back to them because you never know what they're going to do. That was actually one of my jobs, was actually to escort nationals onto the base, be with them their entire time while they're working. And as an escort, I can accompany about 5 people at a time. And it's very scary. 5 people on one person, and you can get overpowered really quickly. Thankfully, nothing like that has ever happened to me. But yeah, it was always scary because you just never know. I mean, we had times where we had to shut down entire DFACs because one of the Afghan nationals had Al Qaeda got a hold of their family, said, "You do this, or we're going to kill your family." So we had it to where we were eating one day, and we're getting metal shavings in our food. They were trying to kill us through ingestion of metal shavings. Another DFAC I'd never been to got shut down because there was rat poison in the food. Yeah, it was pretty scary. I remember one time, the only time that I've been close to being outside of the wire, I got tasked out to help Buddhist chaplain out, and he wanted me as a guard to take him into the local hospital, which was just on the other side of our gate. So I took him in there, and that was probably one of the scariest moments that I've ever had, but was only because I'm seeing bodies of people who've been blown up by mortars or landmines that are all throughout that area, but it's also the kids. We've heard horror stories about the kids that they ended up stabbing someone, and so these kids are conditioned to kill Americans for their parents. They think that's a good thing for them. So I've got 30, 40 kids around me. I'm trying to be nice and pass out stuff for the chaplain, but at the same time be on edge because I'm carrying my rifle with me. I got to make sure they're not trying to toy with the rifle. Also, not get too close to me, so that way, in case if they were, hey, you need to do this, they're not going to do that to me. One of the biggest things was they see moles on my face and on my head. They're like, "That's royalty. That's royalty." I'm like, "What's that all about?" Apparently, if you got moles on your face, you're quote unquote royalty over there. So I guess that's another reason why they never really messed with me. But that's a here nor there thing. I still just definitely kept my distance from everybody from them because I always wanted to come home.
So when you're in Afghanistan, what is your MOS in Afghanistan? Why did they send you there?
So we're a communications unit, and our biggest thing was to basically hop around to all these other places to provide communications for those bases. At that point in time, we had upgraded to the new SATCOM called an STT, Satellite Transmission Terminals. They were these big trailers that we just hauled right behind trucks, and we can have that system up in about 35, 40 minutes, give or take. And that was our duty, was just basically provide communications for all these bases.
You said that you wore many hats while you were there.
Yes.
Was that typical of people that were deployed there?
Typically, no. That wasn't the case. They needed someone to help alleviate a lot of the stress that was over there, and I just happened to be that guy to take on all those hats for him. We were a small contingent on Bagram, and I would say I worked with probably about 20 people, and everyone else had their jobs that they had to take care of, so there was exponentially more jobs that needed to get picked up, but we couldn't bring any more in, so I ended up taking on a lot of those jobs.
Gotcha. What are living conditions like there?
So in Bagram, before I left, we stayed in wooden huts. We had termites constantly raining dust on top of us. It was hot. That's all I know. It was very hot there.
Were these huts that the Army constructed, or were these?
Yes, these were the ones that the Army constructed. Eventually, just as I was leaving, they actually constructed concrete huts for us. And so that's just as I was leaving, we moved over to there. And just before we left, we watched them tear all the wooden huts down. So yeah, that was it. The conditions there were, I mean, we slept on thin mattresses at the time. By the time we moved over to the other location, our mattress got upgraded to a lot thicker. So they were trying to improve the location for us. and they're still steadily improving the area.
Yeah. What is the biggest fear while you're there? The mortar attacks, or
Yeah, the biggest fear was the mortar attacks. I mean, we were, I would say, once, maybe twice a week, usually. Like we pretty much had it down to a science almost. Me and my best friend, and we could be like, you know what? Yeah, it's been a few days. We're gonna get attacked tonight.
yeah,
Sure enough, rounds start coming in. One night, I do remember in great detail. We had just picked up Al Qaeda's #2. He came in under peace, and we picked him up, and they stationed him on our base.
okay,
We got a report that a bunch of mortars got smuggled in, and we're heading to different locations. We knew ours was going to be one of them. And so I just hunkered down for the night, and the next thing I hear, those rounds just start coming in. Alarms were going off. Typically at that point in time, we were supposed to get up, get into the bunker. We were like, they're not hitting anywhere near us. We're not going to worry about it. I mean, I could feel them thumping the ground though. So they were close by, but not close enough. And next thing I hear were some trucks starting to roll down the length of our border. My border wasn't, the border wall wasn't that far from me. I would say probably from us to the airplanes behind you there, it was about as close as they were to me. And come to find out, they had actually laid about 150 pounds of explosives on that other side of the wall. And if it weren't for the QRF team, I wouldn't be sitting here. So yeah.
What was your sense of so the Afghanis that were there, that you were probably working with daily? What was your sense of whether or not they appreciated you guys, or were you guys just looked at as invaders, or
No.
I get there were certain
Yeah.
small minority that wanted to kill you.
Yeah, there's definitely a
Mostly-
small minority.
Yeah, mostly. What did you think?
A lot of them actually appreciated us, primarily because we brought jobs to them. If we need work done on the base, they can come on, work on the post, and get paid for it. And others were tasked out to be cooks. So yeah, a lot of them definitely appreciated us being there, but then you also had that small group that just definitely did not.
What recreation? What kind of recreation or downtime did you guys?
Downtime for us primarily, actually really for me, was just watch movies or talk to my family when I could. Typically over there we had hard drives that we'd pass around, collect different movies from everybody, and go from there.
How do you communicate with your family?
So over there we had Wi-Fi, thankfully. I had my cell phone still at that point in time, which I connected to the Wi-Fi. I was talking to my family on that. Talked to my dad as often as I could, and he was scared for me.
Yeah. Certainly a different world from World War II, where you're writing letters and
Yeah.
months later they arrive. You're instant communication, really.
Yep, instant communication nowadays, and it's definitely changed drastically.
Where do you go from Afghanistan?
So from Afghanistan, I came back stateside. I'm National Guard, so we're 1 week, 1 month, 2 weeks out of the year. Typically, we ended up, once we came back, we were on reset for ourselves.
Right.
And then eventually we started prepping up for our next deployment, which was over to Kuwait. That deployment there was pretty much almost a vacation for us. This was around 2019, 2020. 140-degree weather. It was hot, very, very hot. My job at that point in time was to do unit movements again. They saw how well I did while I was in Afghanistan, so I was primarily unit movement officer for that, but also a team leader for my team. With that there, we actually were tasked to go out to Iraq and be part of Iraqi freedom, but thankfully COVID hit and they stopped all travels for that part there, and so we were halted due to COVID.
I guess the one good thing coming out of COVID.
Yeah, the one good thing coming out of COVID.
How long were you in Kuwait?
Kuwait, I was actually there for just about a full year, just shy of it actually. Um, what I was doing over there as the unit movement, I was traveling between 3 bases. Um, can't give the bases out right now, but just traveling between the 3 of them. And I will say this: that was some of the scariest driving I've ever done. If you want to be NASCAR, go for it. But NASCAR doesn't hold candle to how they drive over there. They change what's a 4-lane highway to 8 lanes, and they're passing you with just inches in front of you or behind you. And if there's a wreck, they don't care. They're going right around it. They don't stop.
Gotcha. So what you're saying is, if there's asphalt, they're going to drive on it regardless of the lanes and
Asphalt or dirt, whatever they can get drive on, they're going to drive on it.
Okay.
I mean, there's times where I get stuck in a little bit of traffic and I'm looking off to my right, and here come like 5 or 6 cars just barreling around to get around all the traffic. I will say, on my first trip out, we were heading out towards the port to grab some stuff, and I started smelling something weird. And you can feel it on your skin, you can breathe it in. Next thing we know, off to our right, we just see a giant flame, giant ball of fire, and it was actually an oil field that caught fire. And we were several miles, about 5 miles away from it, and we felt it all the way out there. So you can feel it on your skin, you can feel the heat 5 miles away.
Right. Wow. Generally speaking, when you're in Kuwait, what mission are you supporting?
So that one there was actually still Enduring Freedom.
Okay.
It wasn't until if we transferred over to Iraq that we'd actually end up being Iraqi Freedom.
Okay. So you're supporting operations inside Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Potentially Iraq.
Yeah. We were always constantly training. We would pull our systems out, set them all up, and bring them down every day. Have them running for a few hours, bring them back down, set them back up. We'd end up doing 24-hour operations just to make sure our stuff is continue to maintain. We actually ended up starting to get some of the newer systems in, and we thought because they actually they phased out our line of sight equipment and started going to a newer set of line of sight, which was nothing but looked like a giant golf ball almost. And we got to play with that for a little bit. I got plenty of training while I was over there. It actually ended up picking up a fiber skill, being able to splice fiber and put fiber ends on. So we were always occupied while we were over there.
How are living conditions different from Afghanistan?
So living conditions were a complete 180 for me at that point. So instead of being in a wooden hut, I was actually in a metal chew at that point in time. The only reason why we were in that one instead of a tent at the time was only because we were actually the ones that were staying there and supporting operations on the base. That's the only reason why we got to stay in those. When we had to leave, we transferred out of those and into tents, and pray to God the air conditioner did not break, because if the air conditioner broke, you were sitting in about 145 degrees outside, so you're looking at about 160 inside.
Yeah. And I imagine that has an effect on the equipment that you're using.
Surprisingly, our equipment stayed operational. Yep. On the SCT equipment, they have internal air conditioners. I mean, even then, all we had to do, if the air conditioner went up on it, was just open it up and allow airflow to get through, and it worked just fine.
How has the deployment tempo changed since we're no longer in Afghanistan? Iraq is definitely...
Our tempo is still the same, actually.
Still the same.
Yep. We will get sent to different locations. Can't say which locations those are, but I mean, they are definitely still there for us. So the tempo for us hasn't changed. Now, when I first came in, we were always on the edge of, hey, we're getting deployed. Hey, we're getting deployed. It took me almost 8 to 9 years before my first deployment. And when we got told, hey, we're getting deployed, we all thought, this ain't happening. And the next thing we know, we're up in Pennsylvania training, and we're like, okay, well, this is getting a little more real for us. And next thing we know, we're on a plane to go. It's like, okay, yep, we got deployed.
You also spent some time in Japan and Korea.
Yep, Japan and Korea. Actually went to Korea twice. Japan and Korea were nothing but augmentee missions for me. I was only there for about 30 to 40 days each. My job there was to basically go over there and teach the active duty their equipment. And I find it kind of funny the National Guardsmen have to go teach active duty guys their equipment, but it happens. And my time in Japan was very fun for me. We spent a lot of time out on the town, just exploring Japan as much as we could on our off-duty time. We actually got asked to come to a party on post with the Japanese soldiers, and it ended up being that they were passing around trays of sake. So you're seeing these Japanese soldiers get thrashed after 2 or 3, and the Americans were just like 2 or 3 later, like, yeah, okay, you got more? But I mean, they were dishing out, saying, hey, bring more trays, and we were having fun. I've been my time in Korea. It was fun, but a headache at the same time. One thing I will remember is my first time to Korea. I spent about a week looking down right over the DMZ at the time. Our operations over there were basically just run training simulations in case if the North decided to invade the South. And I mean, I was so close that I was like, man, if something pops off, we're not making it.
Right.
And so we were on edge at that point in time. But
Kind of a similar experience your father had when he was in Germany.
yeah, a little similar. But I mean, my time was just basically just to provide communications to 2 separate outposts, from my hilltop down to one that was down below me, and then to one that was all the way back where we came from. And back then, the equipment that we used was the line of sight equipment, and we no longer use it anymore. But it had a gimbal head on it, basically, where you allowed to tilt up, tilt down. And we had our system set up, ready to go. We're waiting on the distant end, and come to find out, they had their mast all the way up and forgot to attach a cable to allow it to go up and down, left and right. So they had to bring it all the way back down, hook the cable back up, go all the way up again. I mean, we were up to about 3 o'clock in the morning before we started getting communications again.
You're obviously still in.
Yep, still
So,
in.
where do you see your career heading?
I've actually got about 3 more years left, and I'll hit 21 years. That's, for me, it's like, wow, 21 years. I'm still, as often as I can, get into any classes I can. I'm always looking forward to forwarding my education. And if I can get into it, I definitely hop on it. There are times where it's been a strain on relationships, and it's rough, but I get through it.
What message would you send a young man or woman who's, I don't know, high school age, thinking about a future in the military?
Understand that it is going to be a strain on your life. Opportunities are going to pass you by, but what opportunity passes you by, another one will come forward. You're going to make friends, and even though you have a family now, the family you will make while you're in, it's going to be a strong family.
When this is all said and done, when your career is done, you have you're looking back in the rearview mirror, what would you like someone to know about your service? Someone who may watch this interview in 50 or 100 years, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, something like that.
My service is nothing special. I did this for myself and my country. I wanted to prevent stuff from happening. Yes, I'm doing this in the background. I'm no one special. But knowing that my service did something, it makes me happy.
Yeah. Well, on behalf of the Americans in Wartime Experience, I thank you for that service, and I do thank you for sitting down and telling your story.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.